Tuesday, an ordinary Tuesday in late April, just like hundreds of other Tuesdays in my life. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping on cold coffee and doing the crossword puzzle in the morning paper. The sun was shining through the tattered curtains, painting light-colored squares on the linoleum. My old house in Lower Burrell creaked inside, as if agreeing that we were both well past 60. My hand froze over the newspaper. I'd just checked the lottery ticket I'd bought last week at Pete's store on the corner of 5th and Cherry. Checked it once, again, again. It was all right. The 6 numbers I'd picked over the last 20 years, my late wife Helen's birthday, my birthday, our wedding day, our son Vance's birthday, and the 2 numbers Helen had always considered lucky, all stared back at me from the TV screen where the morning news was playing. Noah Giles, I said to myself, you just won $2 million. There was no shout of joy, no victory dance, just silence and a strange sense of unreality. At 68, I never expected life to give me such a surprise. 43 years I sorted letters at the Lower Burrell post office. The same thing every day. Retired 5 years ago. I live on my pension and the small savings that Helen and I put away all my life. It's not luxurious, but it's bread and butter. I looked at the ticket again, then at the numbers on the screen. My heart was pounding so hard that it felt like it was going to jump out of my chest. I finished my cooled coffee in one gulp and looked out the window at my old 2008 year Ford, which was about to fall apart. $2 million, I repeated. $2 million. Thoughts swarmed in my head. What would I do with that kind of money? A new house? A car? Travel that Helen and I had always dreamed of but never realized. And then I thought about Vance and his wife Beverly, and my thoughts took a whole different direction. My son Vance wasn't a bad kid. Honest, hardworking, but weak. Always had been, ever since he was a boy, easily influenced by stronger men. I tried to build character in him, but after Helen died when he was 15, something snapped in our relationship. I wallowed in grief, and he wallowed in teenage rebellion. We somehow slipped past each other and have never really connected since. 8 years ago, he married Beverly Lampkin, a dental receptionist with socialite ambitions. A tall, always impeccably dressed and coiffed woman with cold eyes and a smile that never reached those eyes. She looked at my modest home, my shabby clothes, and my old car, and I knew immediately. She had me down as a loser. She was polite at first. She invited me to dinners where I felt out of place among their new important friends. Gradually, the invitations became less frequent. Then they stopped altogether. When Unia was born, I thought things would change. But to Beverly, the child was more of an accessory than a person. I remember one day hearing her on the phone saying, "No, we can't invite him to the party. Have you seen the way he dresses? In that awful tweed jacket that looks older than me. He absolutely doesn't fit in with us." That hurt. Not because I was so eager to go to their party with pompous friends, but because I realized she was ashamed of me. And Vance was silent, as always. Since then, our communication had been reduced to holiday phone calls and the occasional family dinner, which had always been strained. Beverly always found an excuse to remind me how well they were doing, how successful they were, how important their friends were. And I sat there nodding, feeling the distance between us grow longer each time. The only ray of light in this relationship was my granddaughter Unia, a 13-year-old girl with clear eyes and a smile that reminded me of Helen. She had somehow miraculously escaped her mother's vanity. She loved to come visit me when Beverly was busy with her social obligations. We'd bake cookies from Helen's recipe. I'd tell her stories about times when there was no internet, and she'd teach me how to use my smartphone. "Grandpa, you're so funny," she'd say as she watched me try to master the touchscreen with my clumsy fingers. "But I love you like this." Those words meant more to me than all the money in the world. Now, looking at the lottery ticket, I thought about her and how Beverly's attitude would change if she knew I'd won, and it made me sick. I remembered last Christmas. We were sitting around the holiday table at their new house in an upscale neighborhood. Vance was silently munching on turkey. Unia was furtively making faces at me, and Beverly was talking about her new friend, some banker's wife. "They have such an amazing house," she chirped. "And the cars. 2 Teslas. Can you believe it, Vance? We should think about a Tesla. It's so environmentally friendly and prestigious. Then she turned to me and eyed my old but clean holiday sweater with barely concealed disdain. And how are you doing, Noah? Still just as humble? There was so much venom in that modest that I could almost physically feel it on my tongue. Yes, Beverly, I answered then. It's the same. I made my decision right there at the Christmas table. I don't need their approval. I don't need their fake respect based on numbers in a bank account. I'm going to live the rest of my life the way I see fit, not the way someone else thinks is prestigious. And now, with a lottery ticket in my hand, I realized that I would not change that decision. 2 hours later, I was already sitting in the lottery commission office. A gray-haired woman with kind eyes explained to me all the procedures, taxes, and options for receiving my winnings. I chose the lump sum payment. After all the deductions, I received a little over $1,100,000, a huge sum for a man who had spent a lifetime making every dollar count. Mr. Giles, we usually take pictures of the winners for the press. It's part of our publicity campaign, she said, pointing to a young man with a camera who was waiting in the corner of the room. I shook my head. I'd prefer to remain anonymous, if I may. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. Of course, that's your right. But most winners, I'm not the majority, I interrupted her gently. The young photographer, his name tag read Lamont Kinnear, lowered his camera disappointedly, but nodded understandingly. As you wish, sir, but if you change your mind, I'm always at your service. He handed me a business card, which I slipped into my pocket. When all the formalities were settled, I went out into the street with the check, which I was to take to the bank. The spring wind ruffled my thinning hair, and the sun shone as brightly as it had in the morning. The world hadn't changed. What had changed was me. No, not me, but my finances. But I was determined that it wouldn't change who I was. I opened a new account at the bank. I transferred part of the money to an investment account on the advice of a bank consultant. Another part I put aside for Unia's education, a secret account that no one was to know about until her 18th birthday. I left the rest in my current account. I didn't buy a new car. I didn't move into a luxury home. I didn't update my closet at an expensive boutique. Instead, I went home, made myself some tea, and sat in the worn chair by the window, the same one Helen liked to knit in the evenings. What would you do with that money, Helen? I asked hollowly. I could almost hear her laugh. Noah Giles, you're the most stubborn person I know. You've already made up your mind, haven't you? Yes, I've made up my mind. This money won't change me outwardly. It won't make me seek the approval of people who judge a man by the make of his car or the price of his suit. But it will give me freedom. Freedom to live the rest of my life on my own terms. The next day, Unia dropped by my house after school. It was our little tradition. On Wednesdays, Beverly would stay late at work and then drive to yoga class, and Unia would say she was going to the library. Instead, she'd come to me. Grandpa, she exclaimed, flying into the house. Guess what? I smiled as I watched her dump her backpack on the couch and pull some paper out of her jeans pocket. My essay got picked for a school contest. Mrs. Patterson said I have a talent for writing. Her eyes sparkled and her cheeks flushed with excitement and the spring breeze. That's wonderful, my little starlet, I said, using the nickname I'd given her when she was just a baby. I always said you were special. We drank cocoa and homemade cookies, and she talked about school, about her friends, about the book she was currently reading. I listened, nodding and asking questions from time to time, and thought about how lucky I was to have such a granddaughter. Mom says literature isn't a real career, Unia said suddenly, looking into her mug. She wants me to become a lawyer or a doctor. Something prestigious. I sighed. Typical Beverly. What do you want to be? I asked. She looked up her eyes. There was so much hope and uncertainty in them at the same time. A writer or a journalist. I like telling stories. I smiled. Then be a writer. Life is too short to live it by someone else's script. Her face brightened, and she threw herself around my neck. And at that moment, I almost told her about the winnings, that her education was now secured, that she could study wherever she wanted, become whoever she wanted. But something stopped me. Not the time. When she left, promising to come back in a week, I sat in silence for a long time. The money in her education account would secure the future she dreamed of. It was the only thing that mattered. In the evening, Vance called. It was unusual. Beverly usually called when they needed something. "Hey, Dad," his voice sounded strained. "How are you?" "Fine," I replied. "And you?" "Good, good. Listen, here's the thing. Beverly's planning a big family photo shoot in a couple weeks. For her blog and stuff. She wants the whole family to come." I squeezed the phone. I couldn't remember an occasion in recent years when Beverly had wanted me at an event. "All the family members?" I interjected. "And when did she start considering me a member of the family?" Vance sighed. "Dad, don't get me started. Unia really wants you to come, and it's important to Beverly. She has new acquaintances. She wants to make an impression. And I'm supposed to be in this play?" I felt the irritation rising inside. "Please, Dad, for Unia's sake." It wasn't a fair reception, and he knew it. I couldn't say no to my granddaughter. "All right," I said finally. "Tell me when and where." After talking to Vance, I couldn't sleep for a long time. Something kept me awake about the sudden invitation. Beverly never did anything for nothing. She always had a plan, always had a purpose, and I doubted her sudden desire to see me at the family photo shoot was motivated by concern for Unia's feelings. But whatever Beverly had in mind, I'd be ready. Not for her, or even for Vance, but for my granddaughter. And maybe a little for myself, to show that Noah Giles can stay true to himself no matter what, even with $2 million in his pocket. I apologize for my misunderstanding of the assignment. You are quite right. The chapter should end before the photo shoot begins, not include the beginning of the photo shoot. I'm rewriting chapter 2 strictly as planned, finishing it the night before the photo shoot. The mailbox on the porch of my old house usually brought no surprises. Bills, sales brochures, and occasional postcards from former coworkers at the post office. That was all its contents. But that Tuesday, a week after I won, I found something unusual, a thick cream envelope with gold embossing. My name was written in calligraphic handwriting, which was strange in itself. There were few people in Lower Burl who dabbled in such fancy handwriting. I took the envelope into the house and opened it at the kitchen table. Inside was the same cream-colored card with a gold border. "The Giles family invites you to an exclusive family photo shoot to be held on Sunday, May 25th at 1 o'clock at Riverview Park. Dress code, elegant casual wear in light colors. Photographer, Lamont Keener, RSVP." I reread the invitation twice, trying to figure out what was going on. Beverly hadn't invited me to a single family event in the last 3 years, except for Christmas, and even then reluctantly. And now all of a sudden it's an exclusive photo shoot? With a dress code? Before I could put the invitation aside, the phone rang. My granddaughter's name popped up on the screen. "Grandpa, did you get the invitation? To the photo shoot?" Unia's voice sounded excited. "Yes, Star Girl. Just got it out of the mailbox." "And you're coming, aren't you?" "You absolutely have to come. I told Mom I wouldn't take the picture without you, and she agreed to invite you." So here's the thing. It wasn't Beverly who suddenly remembered I existed. It was Unia who insisted on my presence. That made a lot more sense. "I'm not sure, Stargirl. These fancy photo shoots, it's not my thing. Please, Grandpa." There was a sincere plea in her voice. "Hoy, Mom invited a bunch of her new friends, and I'll be there all alone among the adults. I need moral support." I smiled upon hearing that phrase. Moral support were the words I always used to cheer her up before a dentist visit or before school performances. "Okay, Stargirl, for your sake, I'll be there." Her cheerful exclamation was the best reward. "You're the best, Grandpa. I love you so much. Oh, Mommy's calling. I have to go now. I'll see you on Sunday." After talking to Unia, I looked at the invitation again. Elegant casual wear in light colors. I opened my closet and looked through my modest closet. Just as I thought, nothing appropriate. There was a dark blue suit for formal occasions and the tweed jacket Beverly despised so much. Neither matched the light colors. The phone rang again. This time it was Vance calling. "Hey, Dad." His voice sounded strained. "Did you get the invitation?" "I did, Vance. And I've already told Unia I'm coming." He exhaled in relief. "Good, good. Look, I know you're not thrilled about all this, but it's very important to Beverly. She's invited the Hawthorns. They're a very powerful family in Lower Borough. James Hawthorne is a bank manager, and his wife Olivia is the head of a charitable foundation. They might be able to help Beverly with her career plans. I hummed. Career plans. Beverly worked as a receptionist at a dental clinic, but she'd always dreamed of something more. Something prestigious. Apparently, she was now aiming for some kind of position at the Olivia Hawthorne Charitable Foundation. I'll behave myself, Vance, don't worry. Thanks, Dad. Also, he faltered. Beverly asked to be reminded of the dress code. She said you'd better not wear that tweed jacket. I felt the color rush to my face. It was one thing to write the dress code on the invitation, and quite another to specify separately what not to wear. I'll figure something out, Vance, I replied demurely. The next day I went to the mall. After years of saving money, it was unusual to just go and buy new clothes without looking at the prices. Of course, I wasn't going to spend money on designer clothes. It went against my decision not to change my lifestyle. But I could afford quality, simple things without guilt. At Macy's, I chose light beige pants and a white short-sleeve shirt. I added a light gray cardigan in case of cooler weather. All of the clothes were simple but quality, not screaming wealth, but not looking cheap either. For a special occasion? The saleswoman asked as she rifled through her purchases. A family photo shoot, I replied, a little embarrassed. Oh, how cute, she smiled. You know, my husband hates these events too. He says he feels like he's being interrogated under those bright lights and with the photographer's instructions. I grinned. Your husband is a wise man. Back home, I hung the new clothes in my closet and thought again about the upcoming photo shoot. Something was bugging me about this sudden invitation. Beverly never did anything for nothing. She always had a plan, always had a purpose. And I doubted her sudden desire to see me at the family photo shoot was motivated by concern for Unia's feelings. I remembered her career plans that Vance had mentioned. Beverly had always aspired to rise above, to enter more prestigious circles. When we first met, she was working as a receptionist at the same dental clinic. In 8 years, she had worked her way up to receptionist, but I knew that was just a stepping stone in her ambitious plans. Maybe this photo shoot was part of her plan to impress the Hawthorns, to show that she had the perfect family with a respectable older generation. I was only needed as decoration, as part of her image. That thought should have made me angry, but instead I felt tired. Tired of the pretense, of the games Beverly played, of my own son letting her use us all in her endless pursuit of status. In the evening, I sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the old houses of Lower Borough. My thoughts took me back in time to when Vance was a baby and Helen was still alive. We were an ordinary, happy family. Helen baked blueberry pie every Sunday. In the evenings, we played board games. In the summer, we went camping at the lake. When cancer took Helen, Vance was 15. The world collapsed for both of us. I immersed myself in work and grief, and Vance in his teenage world of rebellion and denial. We drifted apart, and I never found a way to regain our former intimacy. Perhaps I didn't try hard enough. Perhaps we were both too wounded by the loss. And then Beverly came along with her ambitions and her ideas of what a proper family should be. She wasn't an evil woman, just superficial and vain. For her, the external trappings of success were important. A big house, an expensive car, prestigious acquaintances. And I, a simple postal clerk in shabby clothes, living in a modest house, did not fit into her picture of an ideal life. At first, she tried to fix me. She invited me to dinners with their new friends, hinted at the need to update my closet, gave me an expensive shirt for Christmas that I never wore. When it became clear that I wasn't going to change, she began to slowly push me out of their lives. Invitations became less frequent, phone conversations shorter, and when we did see each other, she found more and more excuses to go to another room. The only thing that kept us together was Unia, a smart, kind girl, so much like Helen. She was uninfluenced by her mother's vanity and remained sincere and inquisitive. When she was 8, she began to come to me secretly, using the school library as a cover. Those were the happiest hours of my life in recent years. Now, thanks to the lottery winnings, I could provide her with the future she dreamed of. An education at any university, travel, the opportunity to become a writer if she so desired. But for now, it would have to remain a secret. On Friday night, Unaya sent me a message. I can't wait for Sunday. Thanks for agreeing to come over, Grandpa. Love you. I smiled as I looked at the phone screen. For this girl's sake, it was worth putting up with a few hours in the company of Beverly and her pompous friends. On Saturday, I decided to go to the barbershop. It was long overdue for a haircut. Old Sam, who had cut my hair for the past 20 years, whistled when I told him I was going to a photo shoot. A photo shoot? You, Noah Giles? I thought you hated those things. I do, I admitted. But my granddaughter asked. He nodded understandingly. Ah, well, that makes a difference. You can do a lot more than that for a granddaughter. While he worked on my thinning hair, we discussed the latest city news, the baseball season, and the weather. Ordinary topics, ordinary conversation. No one knew that underneath this ordinariness lurked a man with $2 million in his account. Back home, I checked my new clothes. Everything was ready for tomorrow. All that remained was to survive the photo shoot itself. Beverly called in the evening, a rare occasion when she called me directly, rather than through Vance. Noah, her voice sounded strained. I just wanted to make sure you hadn't forgotten about the photo shoot tomorrow. I haven't forgotten, Beverly. You remembered about the dress code? Yes, I bought new clothes, light-colored as required. Really? She couldn't hide her surprise. That's good. Very good. A pause. And also, Noah, this photo shoot is very important to me. The Hawthorns are powerful people in our town, and we want to make a good impression. I understand, Beverly, I replied, trying to hide my irritation. So please be. She hesitated, choosing her words. Be polite and don't talk too much about the past, about the post office and all that. I felt a wave of anger rising inside. Not only was she using me as a stage set, but she was also telling me what I was allowed to talk about. I'll be on my best behavior, Beverly. Don't worry. Thanks, Noah. I'll see you at the park tomorrow. After talking to Beverly, it took me a long time to calm down. I wasn't so much hurt as annoyed by her blatant manipulation. She used everyone, husband, daughter, me as pieces in her game for status and recognition. And the saddest part was that Vance let her do it, unable to find the strength to resist her ambitions. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, a rare weakness for me, and stepped out onto the porch. The evening was warm with a light breeze bringing the smell of blossoming apple trees from the neighbor's orchard. I sat and looked at my street, my life, trying to figure out how I had gotten to the point where I let my daughter-in-law, who barely tolerated my existence. Maybe it was about my guilt over Vance, about not being able to be the kind of father I should have been after Helen's death. Maybe subconsciously I thought I deserved to be treated that way. But now, with money in the bank and a new realization of how short life is, I began to see things differently. I no longer wanted to be a puppet in other people's games. I didn't want to pretend that I was okay with being an outcast, tolerated only out of necessity. I wanted to live the rest of my days on my own terms, with people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give them. When it got dark, I went back into the house and sat in the chair by the window, the same one Helen liked to knit in the evenings. What would you do in my place, Helen? I asked quietly. I could almost hear her laugh and reply, Noah Giles, you're the most stubborn person I know. You've already made up your mind, haven't you? Yes, I have decided. I'm going to go to that photo shoot. I'm going to be polite and discreet, for Unaya's sake, not Beverly and her ambition, and then I'll start living my life the way I see fit, not letting anyone dictate terms to me. Before going to bed, I checked my new clothes one more time and set my alarm for early morning. I wanted to have time to drink coffee and read the paper before the photo shoot. As I lay in bed, I felt a strange excitement, as if something important was going to happen tomorrow, something that would change my life. I didn't know then how prophetic this feeling was. Sunday morning was surprisingly sunny for late May. I woke up earlier than usual, before the alarm clock had even rung. For a few minutes, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the day ahead. A strange sense of uneasiness had been with me since the evening, like something was going to happen, something important. Going down to the kitchen, I brewed some coffee and stepped out onto the porch with a cup. The morning air was fresh and filled with the scent of apple trees in bloom. My old house creaked in the breeze, as if it, too, was waking up and stretching to greet the new day. I glanced at my watch. There were still 4 hours until the photo shoot. Just enough time to read the paper, do some chores around the house, and get ready. Back in the kitchen, I opened the closet where I'd hung the new clothes for the photo shoot yesterday. Light beige pants, a white shirt, and a light gray cardigan, all as Beverly's dress code demanded. I ran my hand over the fabric, feeling its newness, and suddenly a strange sense of protest swept over me. Why should I submit to Beverly's demands? Why should I have to change myself to fit into her idea of what the perfect family should look like? For the past 8 years, I'd let her dictate the terms of our rare meetings, silently tolerated her condescension, her barely concealed contempt for my lifestyle. And now, when she needed to impress her important new acquaintances, I was to play a part in her play? I closed the closet door and walked over to the dresser where I kept my regular clothes. I pulled out my favorite tweed jacket, the same one Beverly hated so much. It was old but neat, with leather patches on the elbows. Helen had given it to me for our last birthday together, a month before we'd learned of her illness. I put it on over navy blue pants and a light blue shirt that wasn't new, but clean and ironed. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw the real Noah Giles, a 68-year-old widower, a former postal clerk, a man who'd lived a modest but dignified life. Not the man Beverly wanted me to be. I knew that my choice would anger her, that she would be humiliated in front of her new friends, that her father-in-law showed up for an exclusive photo shoot in a tattered tweed jacket. But at that moment, I didn't care. I no longer wanted to pretend to be someone I wasn't just to satisfy her vanity. My only regret was that my protest might upset Unaya. But I hoped she would understand. She had always been wiser than her years. At noon, I got into my old Ford and headed for Riverview Park. The car coughed and squeaked, another element of my image that annoyed Beverly. She always parked her shiny SUV away from my car, as if its age and shabbiness were contagious. Once parked, I walked leisurely to the meeting place, a large gazebo by the pond. It was a beautiful day, sunny but not hot, with a light breeze playing in the leaves of the trees. The park was full of people, families with children, elderly couples, teenagers on bicycles. A typical Sunday in Lower Borough. From a distance, I saw them. Beverly in a white linen suit and wide-brimmed hat. Vance in a light blue shirt and beige pants. Unaya in a pink dress. Next to them stood an elegant, middle-aged couple. Must be the Hawthorns. A young man with a camera was setting up equipment, giving instructions to an assistant who held a large silver reflector. Beverly was the first to notice me. I saw her face change, first surprise, then disbelief, and finally pure, unconcealed rage. She said something quickly to Vance, and he turned toward me, his face a mixture of confusion and alarm. Unia saw me too and waved, but Beverly stopped her with a hand on her shoulder. I approached the group, keeping my composure and dignity. "Good afternoon, everyone," I said, nodding. I apologized for being a little late. The Hawthorns, whom I was seeing for the first time, smiled politely and nodded back. James Hawthorne even extended his hand. James Hawthorne. "And you must be Vance's father?" "Noah Giles," I shook his hand. "Nice to meet you." Beverly stood as if thunderstruck. Her eyes were throwing lightning bolts, and her face had turned purple despite the carefully applied makeup. "Noah," her voice was quiet but drenched in rage, "may I speak to you privately?" Without waiting for an answer, she grabbed my elbow and dragged me to the side, away from the others. When we had moved a fair distance away, she turned to me, her face contorted with anger. "What is that?" She pointed at my jacket. "I clearly stated the dress code on the invitation. Light colors. You said you bought new clothes." "I changed my mind," I replied calmly. "Decided to be myself." "Be yourself?" Her voice went up an octave. "We're not at your retirement meeting, Noah. This is an important photo shoot for my career. The Hawthorns can help me get a seat on the board of a charity, and you're ruining everything with your... She looked at my jacket in disgust. "That old thing." I looked her straight in the eye. "This jacket was given to me by Helen. It's precious to me." "I don't care who gave it to you," Beverly hissed. "It looks like you found it at a thrift store sale 20 years ago. You can't show up in it in pictures that everyone I know will see." I felt a wave of anger rising inside but held it back. Instead, I said calmly, Then perhaps I'd better not appear in those pictures at all. Exactly, Beverly exclaimed. Fwanum, I'm glad you understand. You'd better go now before the Hawthorns realize what's the matter. I'll tell them you suddenly felt ill. I nodded. All right, Beverly, if that's what you want. I turned to leave, but she stopped me. And please don't tell Unia that I kicked you out. Tell her you had to leave on an urgent business trip. I will not lie to my granddaughter, I said firmly. Beverly clenched her fists. God, why do you always make everything so complicated? Just go. We walked back to the group. Unaya immediately ran up to me. Grandpa, I'm so glad you came. She gave me a hug. I love your jacket. It's so you. I smiled, feeling my heart warm at her sincerity. Thanks, our star girl. Beverly coughed. Unia, honey, Grandpa has to go. He had some urgent business to attend to. Unia frowned. What kind of business? You promised to come to the photo shoot, Grandpa. I looked at her confused face and couldn't lie. Your mom doesn't think my jacket is appropriate for the photo shoot. She'd rather I leave. Unaya turned to her mother, her eyes widening in surprise. Mom, you're kicking Grandpa out because of a jacket? Seriously? Beverly blushed even more. Unaya, this is an adult conversation. Grandpa knew about the dress code and chose to ignore it. But it's just a jacket, Unaya exclaimed. Who cares what he's wearing? He's my grandfather, and I want him in the pictures. Vance, who had been silent until then, awkwardly shuffling from foot to foot, finally intervened. Dad, maybe you could just take off the jacket. It's a shirt underneath, right? Beverly immediately seized on the idea. Yeah, sure. Take off your jacket and you'll be fine. I shook my head. No, Beverly, this isn't about the jacket. It's about you being ashamed of me. My looks, my past, everything I represent. You want me to be the set in your play, the respectable older generation for your new friends, but only if I look and act in a way you find acceptable. The Hawthorns, who were standing off to the side but undoubtedly heard every word, looked uncomfortable. Olivia Hawthorne whispered something to her husband, and he nodded. Beverly looked like she was about to explode, her face contorted with rage and embarrassment. How dare you say such a thing in front of our guests? She hissed. You're doing this on purpose to humiliate me. She turned to the Hawthorns with a strained smile. I apologize for that scene. Unfortunately, Vance's father has been, lately, not quite well. Sometimes he forgets where he is and how he should behave. James Hawthorne frowned, clearly not believing a word of it. Olivia Hawthorne looked at Beverly with an expression that could only be described as disappointment. And then Beverly did something I never expected her to do. She turned to me and said loudly, so that everyone could hear, That poor old man doesn't belong in the family picture. He showed up in that awful jacket on purpose to ruin everything. Look at him. No wonder he lives alone in that tiny house, scraping by on his own. There was dead silence. Unaya looked at her mother with wide-open eyes full of tears. Vance looked as if he wanted to fall through the ground. The Hawthorns froze in shock, and at that moment the photographer, who had been silently observing the scene until now, suddenly stepped forward. He looked strangely familiar, and I didn't immediately realize how I knew him. Excuse me, he said, looking at me with surprise, but aren't you the man who recently won $2 million in the lottery? Now it was my turn to freeze in shock. I remembered where I had seen this young man, in the lottery commission office when I received my winnings. Lamont Kinnear, the photographer who wanted to take my picture for the press, but I refused. Yes, that was me, I replied slowly, feeling all eyes on me. Lamont smiled. That's what I thought. I was there that day, wanted to take your picture for the paper, but you refused, said you preferred to remain anonymous. Beverly stared at me, her face slowly changing from fury to confusion, and then to shock and disbelief. $2 million? She uttered, as if every word hurt her. Unio ran up to me, her eyes shining. Grandpa, is it true? You won the lottery? I nodded. Yes, about a month ago. I didn't want anyone to know. Didn't want it to change the way people felt about me. Wow, she exhaled. I mean, that's amazing. Vance stood with his mouth open, clearly unable to believe what he was hearing. Dad, why didn't you say anything? I looked at him. What would it have changed, Vance? He didn't come up with an answer. Beverly, on the other hand, had finally come to her senses. Her face was instantly transformed, from skewed with anger and contempt to sweet, with a wide but obviously fake smile. Noah! She exclaimed, stepping closer and trying to take me under her arm. What a surprise! Why didn't you tell us? We would have had a party, celebrated the occasion. I gently but firmly withdrew her hand. Beverly, just a minute ago, you were calling me a poor old man who didn't belong in the family picture. You were ready to kick me out because of my jacket. Now all of a sudden you want to celebrate. She looked embarrassed but quickly got over herself. I was just worried about the photo shoot. You know how I am about details, but that doesn't mean I don't love you as Vance's father. Her words sounded so fake that even the Hawthorns cringed. Olivia Hawthorne shook her head, and James Hawthorne looked at Beverly with poorly concealed disgust. I turned to Unia. Stargirl, I really have to go, but don't worry, I'll see you soon. She hugged me. Promise? Promise. I nodded to Vance, who was still standing in a daze, then turned to the Hawthorns. It was nice to meet you. I apologize for the awkward situation. We're the ones who should apologize, Olivia Hawthorne said, casting a cold glance at Beverly. We didn't mean to be the cause of a family conflict. Beverly looked like she was about to cry. Noah, please don't go, she exclaimed, grabbing my hand. Let's forget everything I said. You absolutely must be in the family photos. I gently released my hand. No, Beverly, I think it's best for everyone. I turned to leave, but Beverly wouldn't give up. But what about the $2 million? What are you going to do with them? I stopped and looked at her over my shoulder. Live my life, Beverly. By my own rules. What I've always wanted. With those words, I walked away, leaving a stunned Beverly, a confused Vance, a glowering Unaya, and a clearly impressed Hawthorne behind me. As I passed Lamont Kinnear, I stopped. Thank you, I said, though I wasn't sure exactly what I was thanking him for. He smiled. You're welcome, Mr. Giles. And you know, that jacket really suits you. I nodded and continued on my way. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. Free from pretense, from having to conform to other people's expectations, from the weight of the secret I carried inside me. When I reached the car, I turned around and looked at the group of people by the gazebo. They were still standing there like actors on stage after the main character had left the play. Beverly was saying something animatedly, waving her arms. Vance was standing with his head down. Unia was looking in my direction. And the Hawthorns looked like they were about to leave. I got into my old Ford, started the engine, and drove out of the parking lot. There was a new chapter of my life ahead of me, and I was ready to start it. On my own terms, with pride and dignity, and with the tweed jacket Helen had given me. When I returned home after the photo shoot, the house greeted me with its usual silence. I hung the tweed jacket on the coat rack in the hallway, went into the kitchen and put the kettle on. My hands trembled slightly. The adrenaline from the scene in the park still lingered. I hadn't planned for my secret to come out so suddenly and dramatically. But maybe it was even better this way, like ripping off a Band-Aid in one swift motion. The kettle whistled. I brewed a strong black tea and sat at the kitchen table, looking at the old photographs hanging on the wall. Helen with little Vance in her arms, our wedding picture. Vance in his graduation gown. Junaya at 5 years old with a toothless smile and pigtails. Moments of life frozen in time. The phone rang as I was finishing my second cup. Vance's number popped up on the screen. I knew he'd call sooner or later, but I didn't expect it to be so soon. Hey, Vance, I said, trying to keep my voice sounding calm. Dad. He was quiet for a moment, as if he didn't know where to start. Is it true? What the photographer said? Did you really win $2 million? Yes, it's true. Pause again. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. Why didn't you tell us? I sighed. What would have changed if I had told? Well, everything. His voice rose. We would have. What, Vance? Would you have started treating me differently? Like Beverly did today when she found out. He fell silent again. I knew my words had hit the mark. Dad, about today, Beverly is very upset. She didn't mean to. I mean, she didn't think. She didn't think that calling me a poor old man and ordering me to leave might be hurtful? I tried to speak calmly, but bitterness still seeped into my voice. She was just worried about the photo shoot. The Hawthorns are very important to her. It's a chance for a new job, a better life for us. Vance, I interrupted him. You don't need to justify your wife to me. I realize you're in a difficult situation. But I'm also entitled to respect no matter how much money I have in my account. He took a deep breath. I know you do, Dad, and I'm really sorry. Really sorry. Beverly wants to apologize too. Maybe we could come over to your place tomorrow? The whole family? I almost laughed. The whole family. Like we'd been one close-knit family for all these years. I don't think that's a good idea, Vance. I need time to think it over. But Dad, I'll call you in a few days, okay? He reluctantly agreed, and we ended the conversation. I knew this was just the beginning. Now that the secret was out, they wouldn't leave me alone. I turned out to be right. Beverly started calling the next morning, and her calls didn't stop all day. I didn't answer, letting the calls go to the answering machine. Her messages grew more insistent, her voice growing sweeter. Noah, it's Beverly. I just wanted to apologize for the misunderstanding yesterday. Please call me back. Noah, I really feel terrible about what happened. We're all very worried. Yunaya has been asking about you. Please, let's talk. Noah, I baked your favorite apple pie. Maybe we could stop by tonight? Just a family dinner, nothing fancy. By evening, a handwritten postcard turned up in my mailbox, a handwritten apology from Beverly, with promises that things will change and we'll be a real family. The card smelled of perfume, and the handwriting was neater than usual. On Tuesday, Vance himself showed up, knocking on the door while I was eating breakfast. I let him in, noting that he looked tired and stressed. Hi, Dad, he said, shuffling awkwardly from foot to foot in the hallway. Can I come in? I nodded and pointed into the kitchen. He sat down at the table where we'd sat hundreds of times before, when he was a kid and then a teenager. Though a lot had changed since then, something about his posture, the tilt of his head reminded me of little Vance, coming in with school problems we solved together. Coffee? I offered. Yes, thank you. I poured him a cup and sat across from him. Beverly is very upset that you're not returning her calls, he began. I'm not ready to talk to her. She's genuinely sorry, Dad. She even cried last night. I looked at him skeptically. Because she hurt me, or because she missed her chance to get her hands on some of my money. Vance flared up. That's not fair. She does feel terrible. Yes, she behaved wrongly in the park, but she was on edge about the Hawthorns. That charity work could have changed our lives. And now that you've learned of my winnings, that job isn't so important anymore? He looked away. It's not about the money, Dad. It's about family. We want you to be a part of our lives. Unia asks about you all the time. I sighed. Mentioning Unia was clearly manipulative, but I couldn't be mad at my granddaughter. How is she? Vance's face brightened slightly. She's thrilled with the news of your winnings. Says you're like a superhero now with a secret identity. I smiled involuntarily. It was a lot like Unaya to see adventure where the adults saw only money and trouble. Vance, I said, looking my son in the eye, I realize you're caught between two fires, and I don't blame you for protecting your wife. But I can't just forget everything that happened. Not just on Sunday, but over the years. He lowered his head. I know we weren't the perfect family, but we can fix things, start over. Because of $2 million? No, he looked genuinely hurt. Because you're my father, because Unia adores you, because family's important. I stared at him for a long time, trying to see beyond the grown man to the little boy I once knew. The boy who cried at his mother's funeral, holding tightly to my hand, who built birdhouses with me every spring, who trusted me with his secrets and dreams. When and how did we lose that connection? Was it my fault? After Helen's death, I got bogged down in work and grief, perhaps not giving him enough attention when he needed it most. And then he'd met Beverly, who seemed to know what he wanted out of life, and had dragged him along in his pursuit of status and external well-being. Dad, Vance's voice brought me back to reality. I need time, Vance. I can't just forget everything and pretend it never happened. He nodded, though I could see the disappointment in his eyes. Can we at least have Yunya come to you? She misses you. Sure. Have her come over on Wednesday after school as usual. He finished his coffee and stood up. Thanks, Dad. Sorry again for everything. After he left, I sat at the table for a long time, going over our conversation in my mind. Vance seemed sincere, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Beverly was behind his words. Her desire to make amends was too sudden, too insistent to be sincere. In the evening, Beverly called. Noah, her voice was honeyed. Vance said he stopped by to see you. I'm so glad you two talked. I'd like to personally apologize for my behavior. Perhaps I could make dinner for you. This Friday? Beverly, I tried to speak calmly. I appreciate your desire to apologize, but I need time. Of course, of course. She spoke too fast, too enthusiastically. I completely understand. Just know that you are always welcome in our home. You're a member of the family. I almost laughed. A member of the family. When was the last time she treated me like family? Before she found out about the money? Thanks, Beverly. I'll let you know when I'm ready. I hung up the phone feeling tired. This sudden change in attitude was so obvious, so fake, that it only made me cringe. But what to do next? How do I build a relationship with my family, knowing that their interest in me is only dictated by my bank account? On Wednesday, Unia came to see me after school as usual, but something was different this time. She seemed more reserved, like she wasn't sure how to act. Hi, Stargirl, I said, hugging her. How's school going? Fine. She walked into the kitchen and sat down at the table. Grandpa, is it true you're rich now? I sat down across from her. I have money, yes, but I'm still the same person. She looked at me carefully. Mom says you can buy a new house and a new car now and travel. I can, I agreed, but I'm not sure I want to. Why? I wondered. How do I explain to a 13-year-old girl that money doesn't always bring happiness? That sometimes they only complicate life by changing relationships with people? You see, Stargirl, money is just a tool. They can help realize dreams, but by themselves they do not make a person happy. I've lived in this house for almost 40 years. This is where I was happy with your grandmother. This is where I raised your daddy. This is where I met you when you were very young. But don't you want something new? I smiled. Maybe, but I'm in no hurry to make a decision. She nodded, as if considering something. Also, Mom says you can help Dad start his own business now. Yep, that was it. Beverly was already planning how to spend my money. Did your daddy say anything about business? No, she shook her head. But Mom talks about it all the time. And about how we could move to a bigger house, and about going to the Bahamas, and about private school for me. I looked at my granddaughter carefully. Would you want to go to private school? She shrugged. I don't know. There'd probably be more of a workload there, and I'd have to leave my friends behind. What about a trip to the Bahamas? Her face brightened. That would be great, especially if you came with us. I smiled. Despite everything, Unia remained sincere and direct. Unlike her mother, she really wanted me to be a part of her life, not just a source of funding. Grandfather, she suddenly said seriously, I want you to know that I don't care if you're rich or not. I love you for nothing. I felt a lump come up to my throat. I know, Stargirl, and I love you too. We baked cookies as usual, and she told me about a school project she was working on, about a book she'd recently read, about her dream of becoming a writer. I listened, enjoying her enthusiasm and liveliness of mind. In those moments, I almost forgot about the money, about the scandal at the photo shoot, about Beverly's fake apology. When it was time for her to leave, I suddenly realized I had made a decision. Not consciously, not weighing the pros and cons, but somewhere deep inside on a gut level. Stargirl, I said as I walked her to the door. No matter what happens in the near future, remember, you can always count on me. Always. She looked at me strangely. What do you mean? Are you going somewhere? No, not yet, but I'm thinking about a lot of things. And I want you to know that no matter what I decide, you'll always be the most important person in my life. She hugged me tightly. You're very important to me too, Grandpa. After she left, I sat down at the kitchen table and pulled out a notebook. It was time to make a plan for a new life, without pressure, without manipulation, without having to conform to someone else's expectations. The calls from Beverly continued throughout the week. They were joined by visits from Vance. He'd stop by just to chat. But the conversation always somehow centered on my winnings, my plans for the future, how great it would be to be a real family again. On Friday, Beverly sent a basket of fruit and a bottle of wine. It came with a card inviting her to Sunday lunch. "Just a family lunch," she wrote, "to start things off. Please come, Noah. We all miss you very much." I set the basket on the kitchen table and stared at it for a long time. Helen loved fruit, especially mangoes. She would have appreciated such a gift. But Helen was gone, and Beverly had never really taken an interest in what I liked and what I didn't like. I picked up my cell phone and dialed Vance's number. "Hey, Dad," his voice sounded happy. "Did you get our basket?" "Yeah, thanks. Listen, about Sunday lunch." "Are you coming?" "Beverly's making your favorite ribs." I doubted Beverly knew which ribs I preferred, but I didn't argue. "Yes, I'll come, but I have one condition." "What's that?" There was wariness in his voice. No talk of money, no plans, no offers, no hints. Just a family dinner, nothing more. "Sure, Dad." He sounded overly optimistic. "Not a word about money, I promise." I knew that promise would be broken even before dessert, but I still agreed to come. I needed to see them all together, observe their interactions before making a final decision. On Saturday, I went to the bank and had a long conversation with the manager. Then I visited the notary's office and did some paperwork. In the evening, I sat in a chair by the window for a long time, going through old photographs and Helen's letters. "What would you do, Helen?" I whispered, looking at her smiling face in the photograph. I could almost hear her answer. "Be honest with yourself, Noah. Do what your heart tells you to do, not what others expect you to do." By Sunday morning, I was calm and collected. I knew I was facing a difficult conversation, but I also knew I had made the right decision. A decision that would allow me to move on with my life without regrets and without compromising my own conscience. I put on my best suit, not the new one I'd bought especially for the photo shoot, but an old, familiar one in which I felt like myself. I pocketed the envelope of papers and went to my son's house. Beverly opened the door, beaming with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Noah, how glad I am that you have come. Come in. Come in. We've all been waiting for you." Vance stood in the living room, shuffling nervously from foot to foot. Unaya was sitting on the couch with a book, but jumped up when she saw me. "Grandpa!" She rushed to hug me. "Hi, Stargirl." I hugged her back tightly. Beverly bustled around offering drinks, showing off the new curtains in the living room, talking about how long it took her to make dinner. "I so wanted everything to be perfect," she chirped. "After all, today is a special day. We're back together as a family." I nodded silently, watching her, watching Vance, watching the way they looked at each other as if having a silent dialogue. Unaya was the only one who acted naturally. She sat next to me and talked about the school news. Lunch was plentiful and well prepared. Beverly had really made an effort, but the whole ritual seemed fake, contrived. Like we were all in a play where everyone had a part to play, and I was the only one who didn't get a script. "How's work going, Vance?" I asked as the conversation began to fade. "Fine," he shrugged. "Although, I've been thinking about maybe changing direction, maybe start my own business." And there it was. Not an hour later, and the promise not to talk about money had already been broken. "Really?" I pretended to be surprised. "Sorn, what kind of business?" "Well, I've long dreamed of having my own transportation company, a couple trucks to start. Then we can expand." Beverly looked at her husband with ill-concealed impatience, as if urging him to get to the point. "That's an interesting idea," I said neutrally. "How long have you been thinking about it?" "Oh, a few years now," Vance replied, though I'd never heard him talk about such plans before. "It's just that now the opportunity has come up. I thought maybe now was a good time." I nodded. "I see. And how much do you need to get started?" Beverly didn't hold out. "We've done the math, Noah. About $300,000 at first. It's a good investment. The business will pay for itself quickly, and Vance will be able to provide a better life for our family." I looked at her, then at Vance. He looked confused but didn't object. "What about you, Beverly? What are your plans?" Oh, I was thinking about maybe getting a degree in marketing or opening a small boutique. I've always had good taste in clothes. I nodded as if seriously considering her words. What about that job at the charity? The one the photo shoot was organized for? She blushed slightly. Well, that was just an idea. Nothing concrete. I see. I looked at Unaya, who was silently picking at the food on her plate, clearly feeling uncomfortable. What about you, Stargirl? What are your dreams? She looked up. I want to write books, Grandpa, you know. Yes, I know. And I believe you can do it. Beverly threw her daughter an annoyed look, as if she'd foiled some plan, but quickly put a smile back on her face. Of course, honey, but a good education takes money. A good college. Maybe even study abroad. I held up my hand, stopping her. Beverly, Vance, I think we need to talk. A serious talk. They glanced over. Beverly straightened up, her smile even wider, even more fake. Sure, Noah. What do you want to talk about? About the money, about my winnings, about what comes next. Unaya started to get up from the table. Maybe I should leave. No, I took her hand. Stay, please. This concerns you, too. Beverly and Vance exchanged glances again. I saw a mixture of hope and concern in their eyes. They were clearly expecting me to announce my decision to share the money, perhaps even give most of it to them. I pulled an envelope out of my pocket and placed it on the table. Over the past week, I've been thinking a lot about what to do with my winnings, about my life, about our relationship, about the future, and I've made a decision. So what decision have you made, Noah? Beverly pitched forward, her eyes glittering with anticipation. I slowly pulled the first document out of the envelope and placed it on the table. First, I've set up an educational account for Unia. It already has a sum of money on it, enough to pay for any college she chooses, including living expenses and study materials. Unia ahed, her eyes widening. Grandpa, really? I nodded. Yes, little starlet, so you can fulfill your dream and become a writer, or whatever else you want to be. Beverly frowned. That's very generous of you, Noah. What about the rest? I pulled out a second document. This is my will. According to it, most of my fortune will go to Unaya upon my death. She will be able to use the funds when she turns 25. The expression on Beverly's face changed from expectation to confusion, then to poorly concealed disappointment. What about us? Her voice trembled. You will receive a certain amount, I answered calmly. But the bulk of it is earmarked for Unaya's future. Vance, who had been silent until then, finally spoke up. Dad, I don't understand. We thought, we hoped you would help us now. With the business, with the house, with what, Vance? I looked him straight in the eye. With the realization of your plans that I've never heard of before? With the realization of Beverly's dream of social status? Beverly blushed. That's not fair. We just wanted a better life for our family. For a family that only remembered I existed after hearing about the winnings? My voice remained calm, but there was bitterness in it. I already apologized for the photo shoot, Beverly exclaimed. Can't you forgive one mistake? It's not about forgiveness, Beverly. It's about sincerity. Your attitude toward me changed exactly the moment you found out about the money. Vance lowered his eyes, unable to find the words to object. Beverly looked as if she were ready to explode, but held back with all her might. There's something else I want to let you know, I continued, pulling out a third document. I've decided to sell my house and move. Move? To where? Vance looked shocked. To Pittsburgh. I've got my eye on a small apartment there, and I plan to do a lot of traveling. Pittsburgh? Beverly couldn't hide her indignation. But that's 3 hours from here. Exactly, I nodded. Far enough away to start a new life, but close enough for Unia to come up on the weekends if she wants to. What about us? There was resentment in Vance's voice. You always know where to find me, I replied. But I won't live up to other people's expectations anymore, Vance. For too long, I've let others decide who I should be and how I should live my life. I can't believe I'm hearing this. Beverly stood up, her face contorted with anger. After all we've done for you. And what exactly have you done for me, Beverly? I looked at her with genuine curiosity. She opened her mouth, then closed it, unable to find an answer. Exactly, I nodded. All these years I've been an inconvenient relative to you. Tolerated out of politeness and for Yunaya's sake. Now all of a sudden I'm a valued member of the family. I wonder why. That, it's unfair, her voice trembled. You've got it all wrong. No, Beverly, I'm getting it right. For the first time in years. Yunaya, who had been silently watching the conversation until then, suddenly spoke up. Grandfather is right. Her voice sounded surprisingly firm. You never invited him to family dinners. And you, Mom, always said his house was too old and unsightly to bring guests there? Beverly threw her daughter an irritated glance. You don't understand adult relationships, Unaya. I understand enough, she replied calmly. I put my hand on my granddaughter's shoulder, feeling proud of her forthrightness and bravery. When do you plan to leave? Vance asked, his voice sounding depressed. As soon as I sell the house, I replied. Oh, wow, Kinney, I've already contacted a realtor, so I think it'll be within the next month. That soon? He looked shocked. There's no point in putting it off. I've already put my life on hold for too long, Vance. Beverly defiantly began clearing the table, clinking the dishes loudly. The family dinner was over, as was the attempt to repair the relationship for my money. As I got ready to leave, Yunya walked me to the door. I'll miss you, Grandpa, she said, hugging me tightly, but I understand your decision. Thank you, Stargirl. I'll always be in touch, I promise. And you can come visit me whenever you want. As I walked out of their house, I felt unusually light, as if I'd dropped a heavy weight off my shoulders that I'd been carrying for years. The weight of other people's expectations, disappointments, unfulfilled hopes. I was free to choose my own path, to live my own life. The next few weeks passed in a flurry of activity. I officially put the house on the market and contacted a real estate agent in Pittsburgh. I started sorting through my belongings, deciding what to take with me and what to leave behind. 40 years of living in the same house meant 40 years of accumulated memories, items, documents. Vance called 2 days later. His voice sounded depressed. Dad, are you really going to leave? Yes, Vance. But why? Because of what happened at the photo shoot? Because of Beverly? I can talk to her. She'll change, I promise. I sighed. It's not just about Beverly, son. It's about me, about what I want out of the rest of my life. I've always wanted to travel, to see the world. Your mom and I, we planned to travel all over the country after I retired, but she died, Vance finished quietly. Yes, and instead of moving on with my life, I'm stuck in the past. In this house, in this town, in a routine that has ceased to bring joy. What about me? What about Yunia? You're a grown man, Vance. You have your own family, your own life. And Unaya, we agreed that she would come visit me whenever she wanted, and we'll always have a phone, internet. He was quiet for a moment. I don't understand you, Dad, but I wish you happiness. Thank you, son. Beverly didn't call or write again. I knew her pride was badly hurt by my decision, and I didn't expect a reconciliation. That didn't make me sad. Our relationship had never been close, and I saw no point in pretending there was any special bond between us. Yunia, on the other hand, called every day. She enthusiastically discussed my plans, suggested places to travel, asked about Pittsburgh. You should definitely visit the Grand Canyon, Grandpa, she said, and Yellowstone, and Niagara Falls. I will, Stargirl, and I'll send you pictures from every place. A week after our conversation with Vance, I received a letter from him, a real paper letter, which was unusual in these days of electronic communications. He wrote that he understood my decision, though he found it hard to accept, that he regretted the way our relationship had turned out over the past few years and acknowledged his guilt about it, that he loves me no matter what and hopes we can keep in touch even though I live in another city. I read the letter several times trying to hear my son's real voice in it, not Beverly's influence. Something about the words seemed sincere, but I wasn't ready to believe that sincerity right away. Too much had happened. Too long our relationship had been strained and formal. I decided to reply briefly, but warmly. I wrote that I loved him too, and would always be happy to see and hear from him. That my decision to leave didn't mean I was cutting him out of my life. That maybe the distance would help us both realize what was really important. The house sold faster than I expected. Already 2 weeks after I put it on the market, there were serious buyers. A young couple with a young child who dreamed of a spacious house with a garden. They offered a good price, and we quickly agreed on the terms of the deal. That same day, I booked an apartment in Pittsburgh, small but bright, on the seventh floor of a modern building overlooking the river. It was so different from my old home in Lower Borough that it seemed almost symbolic. A new beginning, a new life, new horizons. Unaya came over almost every day after school, helping me sort through things. She looked at old photos with interest, asking questions about my grandmother, about what life was like when I was young. "Look, Grandpa," she held up a faded picture. "Is that you and Grandma Helen? You're so young." I looked at the picture. Helen and I on the beach, she 25, me 28, both of us smiling, holding hands. Happy, carefree, sure that we had our whole lives ahead of us. "Yeah, that's us. First vacation after your daddy was born." "Where's Daddy in this picture?" "With my mom, your great-grandmother. She came over to help us and insisted we get out for at least a little while, just the two of us." Unia looked at the picture thoughtfully. "You two look so happy, like in movies about love." I smiled. "We were happy, Stargirl. Every day with your grandmother was happy, even when it was hard." "Do you miss her?" "Every day. But you know what's weird? Right now, as I'm getting ready to move to a new life, I feel her presence more than ever. It's like she approves of my decision, supports me." Unaya nodded with a serious look. "I think she would want you to be happy." "Yes, that's exactly right. And that's why I'm taking this step." Vance came to say goodbye the day before I moved in. He looked unsure, standing on the doorstep of the nearly empty house. "May I come in?" he asked. "Sure," I stepped back, letting him inside. He walked slowly through the rooms, stopping and looking around as if trying to memorize every corner. "It's strange to see the house so empty," he said at last. "So many memories." "Yes," I agreed, "but the memories will stay with us, even when the house is owned by other people." He nodded, then turned to me. "Dad, I wanted to apologize again. For everything. For the way Beverly and I acted all those years ago. For letting her dictate the terms of our relationship." I looked at him carefully, searching for signs of insincerity, but saw only weariness and regret. "I appreciate your words, Vance. I really do. And I don't hold a grudge against you. But you're still leaving." "Yes. Because I need it for myself, not out of resentment or anger, but because I want to live my remaining years to the fullest." He nodded. "I understand that. E, I want you to know that the door of our home is always open to you, whenever you decide to come visit." "Thank you, son." We hugged goodbye. The first real hug in years. Something broke and something was restored between us in that moment. Not a full reconciliation, not a return to the old father-son relationship, but the beginning of something new, more honest, more realized. Beverly didn't come to say goodbye, which didn't surprise me. Unia came running in after school, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers and a homemade card. "These are for you, Grandpa," she said, holding out the gifts. "So you won't forget about us." On the card was a map of the United States with marked dots, places I was supposed to visit, and it said, "Grandpa's Adventures." I hugged her, feeling a lump come up to my throat. "I'll never forget about you, little star, and I'll write to you from every city, I promise." In the morning, I went around the rooms one last time, saying goodbye to each one. As I closed the door and handed the keys to the real estate agent, I felt no sadness, only a quiet confidence that I was doing the right thing in anticipation of a new chapter in my life. The drive to Pittsburgh took 3 hours. I drove leisurely, enjoying the views, listening to my favorite music, and thinking about the future. About the trips I was planning, the books I wanted to read, the hobbies I wanted to pursue, about the freedom to be myself without having to conform to someone else's expectations. The new apartment turned out to be exactly as I remembered from the viewing. Bright, spacious, with large windows and a view of the river. I unpacked, arranged the books on the shelves, hung some of my favorite photos on the walls. Then I opened the window, letting in the fresh spring air, and sat in a chair by the window, looking out at the river and the cityscape. 2 weeks later, I embarked on my first trip to New York City, the city where Helen and I had honeymooned 43 years earlier. I visited the same places I had visited then, the Statue of Liberty, Central Park, Broadway, but now I saw them with new eyes. through the eyes of a man who had finally realized that life does not end with the loss of a loved one, that it is possible to keep the memory of the past and still look forward to the future. From New York, I traveled to Washington, D.C., then to Charleston, New Orleans, Denver, San Francisco. Each city, each place revealed something new to me about the world, about myself, about life. I wrote long letters to Unaya with photos and stories of my adventures. She would respond with enthusiastic stories about school, about her literary experiences, about the books she had read. Vance, too, would occasionally call or write. Our conversations remained guarded, but there was a new sincerity in them. Beverly was no longer mentioned. Perhaps in time our relationship would recover fully. Perhaps it wouldn't. But I was willing to accept either outcome. A year after the move, Unaya came to stay with me all summer. We explored Pittsburgh together, went to Niagara Falls, spent a week at a lake house. She grew and changed before my eyes from a child into a young woman, confident, with her own views and dreams. "You know, Grandpa," she said one evening as we sat on the balcony of my apartment watching the sunset, "I think that when I grow up, I'm going to live just like you. I'll travel, I'll write books. I won't be afraid to be myself." I smiled. "It's a good life, Star Girl. But find your own path. Don't repeat my mistakes or my successes. Create something of your own, unique." "I'll try," she nodded seriously. "And you know what? I'm glad you've decided to live for yourself. You deserve it." In that moment, I realized I had made the right choice, not only for myself, but also for her, showing her that it's never too late to start living for real, that it's possible to be happy without conforming to other people's expectations, that dignity and being true to yourself is more important than the approval of others. And that was the greatest wealth of all, far more than the $2 million in her bank account, the wealth of freedom, dignity, and loyalty to oneself.